Today I'm going to talk about fiber. You can have both too little fiber or too much fiber in your diet, and both can cause digestive issues. The first thing you need to understand about fiber is that there are two different kinds, soluble and insoluble fiber. Insoluble fiber does not absorb or take on any water. And what it does, and you can think of common sources of insoluble fiber are whole grains, leafy greens, and nuts, the fiber that those contain. The purpose of that fiber in your body is to keep things moving through your intestines. Insoluble fiber isn't digested in any way by your body and will leave through your colon essentially the same way that, in the same form that it came in. The other type of fiber is soluble fiber. And soluble fiber is extremely hydrophilic. It takes on a lot of water, about 10 times its own weight. And as it takes on water, it increases its surface area. It increases its volume. Because it increases its size, it spreads out literally as it moves through your intestines and takes the shape of your intestines. And what that does is twofold. It, one, creates more surface area against your intestines for your body to absorb nutrients from whatever other food that you've eaten along with that fiber. The other thing that soluble fiber does, because of the way that it spreads out across the intestine, is essentially sweep or clean the sides, the surface of your intestines, so that no food or bad bacteria that is hanging on and shouldn't be in a certain area of your digestive system remains there. It keeps everything clean. The problem for a lot of people is that they eat too much insoluble fiber in their diet. Part of the reason for that is the marketing of fiber. It's products that contain insoluble fiber are much more common, especially in terms of like junk food and snack food, than products that contain soluble fiber. And marketing, even though the insoluble fiber isn't scientifically or within research isn't found to be as beneficial as soluble fiber, the marketers don't say that, and so people assume that the fiber that is in a high fiber snack or cereal or bread, whatever it may be, is really good for you. Insoluble fiber is found in whole grains, nuts, leafy vegetables, and typically the skins of fruit. Now, soluble fiber, certain kinds just absorb water once they've been eaten, and others you're kind of used to in the modern American diet because they take on a gelatinous presentation before you even eat them. So, like soaked chia seeds, the gel that comes out of soaking chia seeds is soluble fiber. The stickiness that happens to oatmeal once you cook the dry oats in water is a reflection of the soluble fiber in oatmeal. And the soluble fiber in oatmeal is why it's kind of long been known as something that is good for your digestion and good for your heart/cholesterol. It's the soluble fiber that it contains. Oatmeal tends to contain, per half cup dry weight, about 4 grams of fiber total, 2 grams being soluble and 2 grams being insoluble. If you eat a much larger amount of insoluble fiber compared to soluble, especially if you eat a plant-based diet that has little other filler outside of fibrous foods, so you're not eating any meat or anything that is going to pass through your intestines and take up size. Um, if you're eating a lot more insoluble fiber compared to soluble fiber, your digestion will be too quick. Your stools will be looser, and quite often you will actually encourage your body to leave remnants of things throughout your intestines rather than have everything pass through on a regular basis. Eating a diet with enough soluble fiber, which I would say is at a minimum of about 5 grams of insoluble to 1 gram of soluble, ideally about 50-50, will improve your digestion. It will improve your absorption of nutrients, and it'll make you more regular as far as your bowel movements. It can also go a long way in terms of helping people deal with symptoms of acid reflux. Soluble fiber sources are quite often seeds like chia seeds and flax seeds, cruciferous vegetables like Brussels sprouts and broccoli, certain kinds of beans like black beans and lima beans, oats, and my favorite, which you typically find in supplement form, but psyllium husk. The reason psyllium husk is my favorite type of soluble fiber isn't because it's better, but because it is pure soluble fiber, ground psyllium husk, instead of having some insoluble. And I'm able to take it in supplement form in order to improve the ratios for my body. And soluble fiber is very helpful for my digestion, which gets affected by stress. When you're choosing foods and products for your diet, pretty much any whole food is good, but you probably want to avoid the high fiber health products like high fiber bread or high fiber protein powder. And the reason is that most of that is just cheap filler byproduct type stuff, which is technically an insoluble fiber. But when you have a whole bunch of that stuff, like I said, you're speeding the digestion, so you're diminishing the amount of nutrient absorption that you can get from a given food. That insoluble fiber, unless you're deficient in overall fiber, is probably just going to speed up your digestion and reduce the amount of nutrients that you absorb from whatever it is that you're eating. The high fiber version of hemp protein is just a less processed version where they've left a lot of the hull on the hemp seed. And that can actually, not only does it reduce the protein content, but it can actually upset your stomach. Another interesting point about fiber with respect to whole foods is oftentimes the whole grain versions of things are a little overrated. So for instance, whole grain wheat means that the husk, which contains the most gluten, which is inflammatory for people, even if you don't have an actual allergy or intolerance to it, it contains anti-nutrients. And that whole wheat doesn't contain much, if any, soluble fiber. So if you've already had an adequate amount of fiber in your diet on a given day, the whole grain, that doesn't benefit you, and it actually is more irritating to your stomach versus a more processed, lower fiber version of the carbohydrate. The same goes for brown rice. White rice is much easier absorbed. Um, Sometimes in certain situations, brown rice can be better for achieving certain things like water cuts when doing specific types of diets. But from an inflammation standpoint, you're actually better off eating white rice rather than brown rice, which again just contains insoluble fiber. Um, Historically, the higher quality rices are the ones that had the husk removed because people inherently knew that it was irritating, and the people who made less money and didn't have the time or the resources to be removing the husks in their own food would eat the brown rice. Now, brown rice does have slightly more protein, but rice is an extremely low protein food. So you'd be better off just not worrying about the protein or the fiber aspects of rice. And if you're going to use it as a carbohydrate or a food you enjoy, just have white rice. In other cases, like with oatmeal and seeds, quite often it's great to have the whole or the unprocessed version. You're often going to get more soluble fiber. And those staples of foods that we can eat that contain soluble fiber can go a long way in terms of making sure that we get enough throughout the week, throughout the day. The reality is many more foods that we eat, and because we tend to eat in excess as Americans, many of the foods we eat have plenty of insoluble fiber and not enough soluble fiber. And so for that reason, in addition to having staples that you know you enjoy, avocados, beans, oats, chia seeds, flax seeds, another good thing can be to use some organic ground psyllium husk as a supplement that you can take every day or a couple of times a week, and you simply mix it in water. I recommend using an unflavored, unsweetened, just completely natural blend or version, and you just drink it. Drink it with a meal, and it can help improve the digestion and help improve your bowel movements and help keep your body cleaner. It's a very effective way of, on a very basic level, detoxifying yourself. Metamucil is a popular version of psyllium husk, and Metamucil is fine. It contains some artificial sweeteners, so that may not be the best thing. But consider some psyllium husk, organic, because that's one of the, when not organic, that's one of the most toxic as far as the fertilizers and pesticides used crops out there. Most of it is not grown in this country also. So again, you just want to be stringent on the quality that you use. But using that, seeds, remember nuts are going to have mostly insoluble fiber, seeds, soluble fiber, um, seeds, broccoli, cauliflower, certain fruits like citrus, banana, and you can easily look up on the internet a list of foods high in soluble fiber. The point is that you want to try and eat as much soluble fiber as you can and actually keep in check the amount of insoluble fiber you eat. And you'll notice big benefits and big differences to having a high fiber diet that has that ratio versus just having a generally high fiber diet that has much higher amounts of insoluble fiber than you actually want and ends up irritating your digestive system rather than helping it. As a general guideline, I would recommend trying to get a minimum of 10 grams of soluble fiber a day and keeping your insoluble fiber below 30 grams.